Welcome to How to Hand Feed Hummingbirds. This is the fourth video in the Bird in the Hand video series. And in this video you will first learn how to attract hummingbirds into the yard, and then you will learn a quick and easy technique to teach your hummingbirds to feed out of your bare hand. In this part of the video we'll talk about how to attract hummingbirds into the yard. This can be as simple as just hanging a single feeder in your yard. Lots of people have good luck attracting hummingbirds this way, but it might take a lot longer for hummingbirds to find just a single feeder. So I suggest you add at least a few flowering plants. This will provide more color to help attract the attention of any hummingbirds that might be passing through your area. You can start on a small scale with a feeder and just add a hanging basket or two, or maybe some porch boxes or pots filled with flowers. Hummingbirds are most attracted by flowers that are red in color. So red petunias or red fuchsias work well in hanging baskets, and pots or porch boxes filled with red tobacco plants or red salvia will work well to attract hummingbirds. All these additions will help add more color to your yard and in turn make it easier to attract any hummingbirds that might be in your area. If you have more space and would like to spend more time, you might consider planting a small garden to attract hummingbirds. You will want plants that will be blooming throughout the season while the hummingbirds are present in your area. In my garden, I've used a combination of annuals, perennials, shrubs, and vines to provide blooms from the spring through fall. To provide flowers in the spring, my favorite choice is a weigela bush. They bloom early and are loaded with lots of color. Here in my garden in northwestern Ohio, the hummingbirds usually arrive in the spring just about the time the weigelas are about to start blooming, usually around the first part of May. Sometimes they might arrive a few days earlier, so I start hanging feeders in the yard towards the end of April to be sure to catch those early arrivals. Another early blooming favorite of mine are these honeysuckle vines. If you have a fence or trellis or pole that you might grow one on, these would be an excellent addition for any hummingbird garden. The weigelas will only bloom for maybe a couple weeks, so these honeysuckle vines will continue to provide blooms for the hummingbirds to feed on well into the summer. A favorite perennial of mine to use that's just starting to grow is bee balm. It'll be blooming later on in June and continue to bloom through August. Once in bloom, the bee balm will be one of the favorite sources of nectar for the hummingbirds. The final touch to complete my garden and make it totally irresistible to hummingbirds will be to plant some red salvia. Salvia are annuals which have to be replaced each spring when the weather warms and the danger of frost is past. But once they are planted and get to growing well, they will provide lots of red blooms to attract hummingbirds. So here's what we have. We have the weigela with lots of color to attract and hold those early arriving birds. And then as the weigela starts to fade, the honeysuckle will continue to bloom, to be joined by the bee balm. And as these plants start to produce less and less blooms, the salvia will reach its peak blooming period and will continue to carry the load of feeding the hummingbirds until the time they leave in the fall. Each year there are more and more people putting out feeders to attract hummingbirds, so anything more than just a feeder that you can add to your yard will only add to your success to attract and hold some of the birds in your area. Once you have a hummingbird using your feeder on a regular basis, you can continue to the next step, teaching your hummingbirds to hand feed. In this part of the video, I'll show you the quick, easy technique that I use to teach the hummingbirds to feed out of my bare hand. First, we'll just take a few minutes to make a simple dummy that will quickly get the hummingbirds used to our presence in the yard. All we'll need is an old pair of pants, an old shirt, sweatshirt, or jacket, and a ball cap or some other type of hat. We'll need a few feet of twine, rope, or wire. We'll need an old broom or mop. And we'll need some plastic sheeting to stuff the pants and shirt with. You could use old rags or newspapers, but I like to use plastic because if your dummy should get caught out in the rain, get wet, the plastic won't soak up any water and lose its shape. And your dummy will dry out a lot faster. You can get cheap plastic sheeting at hardware stores and garden centers. And we'll need a coat hanger. And we'll need some type of lawn chair to sit the dummy on out in the yard. First, we'll take some twine and tie off the ends of the shirt sleeves and the ends of the pant legs so that we can stuff them with the plastic sheeting. Now we'll cut off some plastic and pack each pant leg. Just cut off enough to kind of fill out each pant leg, and then we'll cut off some to fill in the seat of the pants. One more piece ought to do it. Okay, now that we've got the pants filled up, we'll cut off a piece of twine and put it through the belt loops and pull it tight and tie it on the end. poke that plastic inside. Now just pull it tight, tie it off. Trim the excess twine, and that completes the lower half of our dummy. Now we'll cut some plastic and pack the arms of our jacket or shirt. Okay, now you want to button up your shirt or zip up your jacket. Now we'll take our broom handle or mop handle, whichever you have, and run it down through the bottom of the jacket, up through the top and out the bottom. Now we'll take another piece of twine, wrap it around the bottom of the jacket or shirt, and tie it off so that it's snug against the broom handle. That way when we fill it with plastic, that'll hold the plastic in. Now we'll cut some plastic and stuff the inside of the jacket. That's a bigger area, so we'll start out with a bigger piece of plastic. Cut a piece and stuff it over on the right side, and we'll cut a piece and stuff it over on the left side of the jacket. Okay, now that the shirt or your jacket is stuck, we'll just insert a coat hanger inside, right down in the shoulders. Pull the coat hanger up on top of the broom, that'll hold it in place. Then we'll just wrap one more piece of twine around the neck of your shirt or jacket, pull it kind of snug. And that'll hold that in place. Now all we have to do is add the hat, and the upper half of the dummy is complete. Now that the dummy is complete, we can start assembling a hummingbird training station in the backyard. If you have more than one feeder in your yard, now is the time to remove all but one feeder. If there's one feeder they visit more than the others, keep the one the hummingbirds use the most and take down all the others. Now, the spot where the feeder is hanging, we'll need a pole to hang the feeder from and to attach the dummy's arm to later on. The simplest way to do this is just use a shovel. Just push it into the ground as close to the feeder as you can get it. And to hang the feeder, attach a clothes hanger to the end of the shovel with a piece of duct tape. Hang the feeder on the hook of the clothes hanger and set the chair next to the shovel so that the arm of the chair is directly below the feeder. Now just wait until your bird or birds have each made a couple of visits to the feeding station. Hummingbirds are fairly fearless birds compared to your other backyard birds, so 1 or 2 trips to your feeder should be all it takes for them to be completely at ease with this new setup. Next, just add the bottom half of the dummy to the chair and allow the birds several visits to get used to this new setup. Even a light rain didn't keep the hummingbirds from continuing to use the feeder. Now we'll add the top half of the dummy. Just insert the broom handle through the back of the chair and stick it into the ground to hold the dummy upright. Next, we'll use another clothes hanger and duct tape. Position the hanger on the shovel so that the hook of the hanger is just below the bottom of the feeder. Now raise the dummy's arm up so that you can lay it in the hook of the hanger and squeeze the hook shut to hold the dummy's arm in place. After each of these steps, just allow the birds several trips to the feeder to get used to each new change. Now we'll need a measuring spoon. Get a tablespoon, they're light in weight and have a short handle, and it'll be easy to fasten underneath the feeder with a piece of duct tape. Once the spoon is in place, find some small twigs lying around the yard or get some toothpicks to plug the holes in the feeder. This will force the hummingbirds to feed out of the spoon. Now just fill the spoon with food and wait for the birds to return. In only a short time, the hummingbird makes the adjustment to feeding out of the spoon. Now it's finally time to change places with the dummy and see if this new technique will pay off. I'll carefully place the tablespoon in my hand and wait for the hummingbird to return. In just a few minutes the hummingbird returns, but this time she's hesitant at first to use the spoon. Not only does she see my bare hand holding the spoon, but I've also changed the color of my jacket. Then all of a sudden a different hummingbird comes in to feed, and she quickly chases it away. Upon returning, she carefully looks me over, but decides to go ahead and feed out of the spoon in my hand. Now that she seems to have quickly gotten used to using the spoon in my hand, I'll go to the final step of putting the liquid directly in the palm of my hand. Upon her return, almost without hesitation, she goes directly to my hand and starts feeding out of my bare hand. The final test is to see if someone else can take my place and still get the same results. My wife Gloria sits in the chair, and even though she looks a lot different than me, and the hat is gone, and she's holding her hand a lot further beneath the feeder than I did, even with all these new changes, it's not long before the hummingbird is ready to feed out of her bare hand also. In just a few hours using this technique, the hummingbird has gone from using the feeder to feeding out of the bare hand of anyone who sits in the chair next to the feeder. Now that you have learned the technique I use to quickly and easily teach my hummingbirds to feed out of a bare hand, you yourself can go ahead and apply this quick, easy technique, and in a matter of just a few hours, you and your family and friends will be enjoying all the thrills and excitement of hand feeding your own backyard hummingbirds.